Hello and welcome to the Legendary Backlog. We're glad you're here. In our show, we cover what we've been playing over the last week, a game over 5 years old in our 5-year beyond segment. This is episode 13 and we'll be covering Street Fighter 2. I am Brian and you can find me at TryWinBrian on X. You can follow the show on Instagram and Facebook at the Legendary Backlog, and on X you can find us at Legend Backlog. If you listen to the show and you like it, please follow us on our Patreon at the Legendary Backlog. It's free. It'll give you access to all our sites. We're trying to build a community of people who love games. My co-host is Brian. Would you like to introduce yourself, Brian?
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Brian, and you can reach me on Nostalgic Pixel on X, Blue Sky, and Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel and Twitch channel, Nostalgic Pixel TV, and lastly, a website, nostalgicpixel.com, where I write about movies and video games. Hey, Brian, what have you been playing lately?
This week I played some Claire Obscure Expedition 33. I'm really liking it. The battle in that game is no joke. It's like, yeah, you could die really easy in that game, and it's so the way the game works, like I mentioned last week, is that there's dodge and parry and stuff like that you have to do on your turn. Yeah, when you're fighting the NPCs, and the enemies is really hard to know when to dodge, especially when you come across a new enemy. So you can come across like a battle of like two new enemies and you're not sure when to dodge and you don't know their tail sign yet, and you can just die. So it's pretty tough, but I am enjoying it. The graphics are beautiful. I had a lot of problems with the streaming this week on one night. It was only one night. So every night I've tried to stream through my TV, it's worked pretty good. But one night I tried to play Expedition 33, wouldn't work. Like you couldn't click on certain buttons and things like that. I was like, what is going on? So I tried to play Doom the Dark Ages, and then my controller just started spinning and like until I died, and then like it did it twice. So I was like, okay, I guess their servers are just having trouble or something. But that was kind of disappointing. But I played it again last night and everything seems to be going pretty good still. So I guess that's just something you have to live in the world of streaming. But I'd rather stream from my TV than spend like $500 on a Series X I'm really not going to use much because I'm such a PlayStation gamer.
Yeah, and you have a Nintendo Switch, so you're all over the board with PC gaming, Switch, and PlayStation. Xbox specific, there's not a lot of room for.
Yeah, like especially with me being a PC gamer, there's really not much room for Xbox, because all their stuff's coming to PC anyways, at least lately. One of the games I did play was the King of Fighters 15. And this game came out in 2022. And it's the first King of Fighters game in the Unreal Engine. But how I got to play this was we're covering Street Fighter 2 this week, right? So I told my daughter Ashton, I was like, hey, play this with me. It's like Injustice, okay? And she's like, okay, Dad, I don't want to play. I was like, just play with me. I do stuff with you all the time. I said, just play with me for a couple rounds. We played Street Fighter for about 3 rounds. She didn't like it. Then I decided, I was like, hey, maybe we should like this one. So I picked up the King of Fighters 15, and we started to play it. Man, she loved it, dude. She thought it was amazing.
Really, which character does she gravitate towards?
All the female characters. She really likes Mai, though.
Mai.
Yeah. And she's actually a really good character in that game. Like, my daughter can just jamming buttons can be like almost unstoppable with her. So, yeah, it was really fun. I really don't know much about the King of Fighters. I haven't played since the Saturn days, to be honest with you. Or maybe the Dreamcast days was the last one, Mark of the Wolves, I played. Going back to it, I really enjoyed the character roster and the moves. And I like how it's so distinctly different from your Street Fighter or an Arc System or game. It's like very distinct. There's like a lot of people that really don't throw fireballs and stuff like that. They use like martial arts and things like that. And it seems to be really balanced from what I've seen so far. And I haven't really played with a bad character. I played with some lesser than characters, but not a bad one.
Well, you might look into that. Remember a few years back, SNK released like a King of Fighters game, but it was all women. Like it was all the women of their franchises. It was all just a female roster entirely. Can't remember exactly the name of that one, but Yeah, if I'll look that up later, but that might be something she likes in the future. If you're just trying to get her into more fighting games, like Femme Fatale or something.
Femme Fatale, I'll have to look it up. One of the things she really likes about the game is it's got really strong female archetypes, and there's no shortage of female characters in King of Fighter.
Combos always seem fun with King of Fighters. Pulling off a combo always felt
Oh,
really
yeah,
good.
their combos are really sick, and they're pretty easy to pull off. In this game, though, it's 3v3, so it's 3 players versus 3 players, but they don't call them, they call them members because they're members of your party. It's basically like Injustice, where like you're like once a character's down, you still get to keep your character that had health. So it's a real like it can get unbalanced real quick. Like if you have a bad round, that can like basically ruin the whole match for you, unless you're really good at coming back. My daughter really liked it a lot, so I'm pretty excited about that. I finally found a fighting game she likes besides Injustice, so that's cool.
That's a big win.
That is a big win. So yeah, and then I played Doom: The Dark Ages, and man, that's a good game. That's a good game. I can't wait to get to it. I'm gonna beat Claire Obscure Expedition 33 first, but then I'm gonna go straight to Doom: The Dark Ages. It is such a good game. I played it for about an hour and a half, and it's just like the way that they use the shield now. You can like charge people, and it does like an area effect damage. So like weaker demons, they'll take out like a whole area of them. And just the guns and everything have just been tuned perfectly. And your glory kills. I don't know if you know what that is, but like in Doom, when you need health and ammo, if you get like a demon to the edge of their death, they'll start blinking. Like I think it's like they start blinking orange or purple. I can't remember. I think the last Doom it was orange, but now they blink purple. And anyways, you can walk up to them and press R3. You'll basically like kill them in a glory way, which is like real brutal. But they'll drop all this ammo and health, and just the retune to that has just been amazing. So I'm really looking forward to Doom: The Dark Ages. I can't wait to get back into it more. To be honest with you, I'm a little bit more in the mood to play Doom: The Dark Ages than Expedition 33, but I did start Expedition 33, so I do want to finish it because I heard it's amazing all the way through. So it's been amazing so far. It's just the action that Doom gives you is just it's really fun for me. I like those games. I beat the 2016 one. I beat Doom Eternal. So yeah, I plan to beat Doom: The Dark Ages.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've heard good things about that one.
Oh yeah, it's real good. The Doom: The Dark Ages. I'm a little worried that it didn't light the world on fire, because what happens is if a game comes out and it doesn't light the world on fire, it seems like Microsoft just shuts down the studio, or makes them a support studio for something else.
I have a question about that game for you a little more. Does it feel like you're doing a lot of melee attacks, or does it feel like you're shooting things dead more? Is it a 50-50, or is it even close? Or because I don't know, the melee is fun, but doing it all the time just seems grating. And I like to shoot things dead in a first-person shooter.
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing, right? Like your shield does a lot of damage and you want to use it as much as possible, but there's a pretty hefty cooldown on it, right? So like a good way to start a fight is to rush in with your shield and then kind of back up and start shooting everything, is what I noticed. But yeah, you use different guns and it's basically still a first person shooter. It's not a first person shielder.
Okay, well that's good to hear.
Yeah, so the guns are still there and they're really powerful and they do all kind of cool things, and you have to have ammo and you have to search for it, and there's armor still in Doom, which is cool. They really make you earn the armor. And then there's collectibles, which okay, so like in the 2016 Doom, you picked up like little Doom guys, right, everywhere around the map. And I really liked that. I thought they were really cute and they fit really well.
What's a Doom guy?
Like, like the guy that is Doom in the armor and everything, you would pick up versions of him all over the maps. And they were
following around like lemmings?
No, it's just collectibles, right? Like you get trophies if you collect so many and so forth.
I hear you. Collectibles and models to collect.
But they were really good looking. Yeah. But they're just like, he just picks it up, looks at it, and then it's like, it's over with. That's all you get, right? But the new collectibles is like versions of demons, which I really don't like at all, to be honest with you. It doesn't have the same like, oh wow, that's neat, picking up like a small version of a demon you killed like 100 times, just like, okay, whatever. So that was a
Yeah.
little disappointing, but a very small part of the game. So
Sure.
it
Yeah.
just makes me not want to go out of the way to find them, you know? So, Brian, what have you been playing?
So what I've been playing is kind of, after you recently played through Alan Wake, since I wiped out my PlayStation, it's been easy to install new games. We both, like you mentioned, both have Alan Wake, so I installed it and I started playing the PlayStation version. I've gotten a little bit far into it. I'm going to play it some more. I've enjoyed it. You've mentioned it before. I played a lot of the Xbox 360 version, so I've already recognizing certain things like I mentioned, like the batteries are just batteries and not like energizers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I've noticed in this game, just kind of early, okay, so one of the early observations I've noticed with this game is it does show its age a little bit to me on how the gameplay is kind of laid out, and like it wants you to do certain steps and kind of guides you through, which is fine. It definitely feels like an Xbox 360 era game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. That was a really good era, but it's just, even though it has like a new coat of paint, it still seems like still feels like that generation. But I'm excited to continue to play it because this is a genre I like, and they're not usually too long in the tooth. So I'm gonna keep playing it some more. Another game I booted up.
Hold on, what episode are you in Alan Wake?
I don't remember the episode. I'm at the lake house.
Okay, for the first time or second time?
I guess it'd be the first time.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. You know what? A lot of people say that the Alan Wake's gameplay has aged pretty badly, or like it just feels old. But to me, I actually enjoyed it because it felt like refreshing. It felt like a simpler time when games were more, hey, just have fun with this game. You don't have to collect.
Brian, you don't get that argument from me. I like playing old games, so if it plays like an old game, that's not a bad thing at all. It's just a sign of its time, an error for me. You know, I'm like, oh, I can't do this. I'm frustrated. I don't get like that.
Yeah, I guess
okay.
I'm just saying, like, I miss the period where, you didn't have to do, like, all these things, all these objectives all over the map and stuff. Alan Wake is pretty straightforward, and, like, I kind of enjoyed that about it.
Yeah, it's linear, and the way I liked it to be linear. So it's telling me to go do something, I go straight to do it. I might look around a little bit, but mostly it's just going to the next objective, working it out, because that's the way it's built. It's fun that way. But so another game I was playing some this week was Grand Theft Auto 3. You mentioned like we'd recently got it on our PlayStation Plus subscription, and I know there's been a lot of updates to this specific release that was part of like the definitive trilogy or whatever that was based off of like the iPad version. It's gotten a lot of love and a lot of different upgrades to make it a lot closer to its original, but with all the benefits of higher resolution and everything. And it runs, from what I saw and what I played, is a lot of fun. And I'll tell you what, every time I play that game, like the first time I played that game, I was all over the place and I did everything. And then every time I keep going back, I'm very more strategic. Like I can, oh, you want me to go pick up this girl and drop her off here? Boom, I'm in a car. I'm picking her up, dropping her off. You need me to go do this? I'm really quick. And like I even got like a trophy for not damaging my car through the mission. Like I finished the mission with like my car in perfect tact, and it gave me a trophy. I'm like, oh, I just know if I show up with a piece of junk beat up or whatever, like they're not going to get in it, and then I have to go paint and spray or get another car. So like I'm driving fast, but I'm also just being careful. But like I said, every time I kind of go back to this, like I just play it like as the game, like just that more. I don't know what I'm trying to say. That just more straightforward. Like I'm not exploring it and
Like, follow the quests and stuff like that.
yeah, and I'm also driving around the neighborhood like I grew up there, like, oh, I'm going over to this place. So just, like I don't have to do GPS as much. I know my way around that place like the back of my hand. I have such like a built-in memory of that map. And it was just like going back and like, it was just very comfortable. And it was fun. I played it for a while. And then also other games, just simple, like California Games, surfing on the Atari Lynx through my analog pocket. It was fun. I got like a score of like 5,000. Not my highest score, but it was a really high score. It was fun. Again, that's just kind of one of the games I like to pop in to play for a few minutes to warm up, or if I just feel like I have a few minutes to kill, I'll boot that up. And then, as you mentioned, you're playing other fighting games because of the game for this week. I was playing other Street Fighter games too. Not as much, but I played one of my favorite characters in the Street Fighter franchise. So one of my favorite characters I like in the Street Fighter franchise is Sakura, but she doesn't show up in Street Fighter 2, and she doesn't show up until Street Fighter Alpha 2. So I played some Street Fighter Alpha 2, but then I also, the last Alpha was the Street Fighter Alpha 3. I enjoy that one a lot. So I booted that one up and played it from our Street Fighter Anniversary collection, and that was a lot of fun. And then I also just jumped in for a moment and hot minute and played Street Fighter 3 a little bit. After playing all these different versions of Street Fighter 2, I just kind of wanted hey, let's jump in there and just see where the franchise went. And I even booted up Street Fighter 4 and played that on my PlayStation. And oh man, I tell you what, I never as comfortable as I was pulling off all the special attacks in the Street Fighter games. When I got to Street Fighter 4 and I played Sakura, all that muscle memory just kind of flooded back in, and I was crushing it. It was so much fun in Street Fighter 4 playing Sakura. I like her largely for her Dragon Punch combo. I like where she does that long Dragon Punch combo. I like pulling that off. It's a lot of fun playing as her. Yeah, so I was playing other Street Fighters around Street Fighter 2, and I'll tell you what, I booted up Street Fighter 1 just for a hot minute. That game is so rough. It's amazing that they made a Street Fighter 2 based off of that. It is so but they have to start somewhere in the franchise, I guess. But that is not one that I really enjoyed playing when it was out, and that's not one I really enjoyed going back and playing. But I love Street Fighter 2 and all the other ones. But it's just amazing how far back that one was before they got it, and how much they got right in our game coming up this week.
My personal opinion is, I know we're covering Street Fighter 2, which is one of my favorite games of all time. My personal opinion is Street Fighter 4. I think Street Fighter 4 Ultra is the best game that Capcom's ever made fighting wise.
Yeah, I was playing Ultra Street Fighter 4. So much fun.
Street Fighter 5, they started to lose me a little bit, but it was decent, but it just, you could tell they're trying to go in a different direction instead of perfecting what they did before. And you can definitely tell that with Street Fighter 6. So let's go ahead and get in the 5-year beyond segment. Today we're covering Street Fighter 2. The original Street Fighter 2, the World Warrior, was released in 1991. The fighting game developed and published by Capcom for arcades. Street Fighter 2 became the best-selling game since the golden age of arcade video games. By 1994, it had been played by an estimated 25 million people in the United States alone. More than 200,000 arcades and 15 million software units of every version of Street Fighter have been sold worldwide, earning an estimated $10 billion. I had no idea that Street Fighter
$10 billion
made $10 billion.
Wow. Well, no, that's how much it made then, not total currently.
Yes, and that's a lot of money back then, dude. That we're talking
by 94 it made 10. Wait, 94 it made $10 billion. That doesn't seem
that's by 1994.
That can't be.
Yeah,
that's got to be total revenue over the lifetime of the franchise.
Or maybe that's total revenue. That might be total revenue.
Do you remember when you first saw it?
Yeah, I remember when I first saw it. I went to there used to be this place called Ponchos. I think there's some remaining, but it's terrible Mexican food.
Yeah, the one where you hang the flag and you get the sopapillas.
That one.
I love that place.
My mom used to take me there every Wednesday. And one time I went there and they had a Street Fighter 2. And it used to be, those restaurants used to be so packed you had to wait in line for a while just to get your food.
Yeah, they had a waiting list.
I begged my mom for some quarters and she let me play. And I got my butt kicked pretty bad because, it was so popular that two people were always playing at a time. You weren't playing the computer at all.
And it was 50 cents too.
Yeah.
Most of the arcade games were a quarter. This was 2 quarters. And, if you were bad, your game was short because you're playing against the other guy for his 2 quarters.
Yeah, I did pick Ken my first time. And it's funny, Ken is still my favorite character nowadays. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was special. he got me right away. And this week I played the original Street Fighter, the World Warrior again, and it kind of brought me back that memory, that nostalgia. And
Yeah, I remember when I first saw it at the arcade. We had just finished up like a season of like a YMCA baseball, or I think it was our baseball team was like celebrating the end of the season, and we were at a Mr. Getty's Pizza, and they had a little arcade games set up in the back, and there it was, Street Fighter Two, the arcade game, and it was so incredible. 6 buttons. Like that was just like, most games had like two, maybe 3 buttons. There'd be like a punch, kick, and a special or whatever. And this had 6 buttons. That was something else. And I just remember since I was there with my whole like baseball team, like we all kind of crowded around it and we're playing it, and we're all very new. Like no one's like was up there pulling off any skills, but it was a lot of fun checking it out. And the fact that it had 6 buttons, and then shortly, the Super Nintendo at home had 6 buttons. It was really cool that to see a game actually use like all 6 buttons like that. Later on, when it came out on the Super Nintendo, Super Nintendo had 6 buttons, worked out. But like that was so incredible. And I remember that later on, I saw like the original Street Fighter in the arcade, and I was just like, whoa, yikes! This is a rough one. But boy, Street Fighter Two. And then, we there besides all the different versions, like I think, later on see like bootlegs of Street Fighter 2 at the arcade. Like did you ever see any of the bootlegs, like the rainbow editions at the arcade?
my mom went grocery shopping once to Sack and Save. You know how grocery stores used to have like comic books and arcades at the front and
Hmm.
stuff like that, right? Back then, they had several arcades, but one of them was Street Fighter 2. And I was watching a couple people play. I didn't get the chance to play because my mom wouldn't give me the quarters or anything because she was grocery shopping and she only had a checkbook. I remember watching, and I remember people doing hurricane kicks in the air. I remember people doing Hadoukens in the air and doing crazy combo stuff. I thought it was pretty crazy. I thought maybe a new Street Fighter had come out that I didn't know about. I didn't realize it was a hack, which is pretty
Yeah.
interesting that there was actually arcades of those hacks.
Yeah, I mean that's what it was. It was crazy because like you look at the cabinet, and like the one I remember seeing, it was just a regular Street Fighter cabinet. Maybe it was like even didn't have all the graphics on it, but like it was, yeah, it looked like Street Fighter Champion Edition, but with all this other crazy stuff going on. And I love the being able to jump up in the air and throw like a fireball and stuff. It was really cool just to see that there was such a scene like that, because even though that's not new, like Miss Pac-Man was an arcade hack. It was cool to see that was kind of a thing in the world, because there's so many versions over the years of Street Fighter 2 that happened, and then you had these bootlegs kind of sneak in. It was able to do a few things that they weren't able to do. One of the features of the bootleg was just it kind of sped the game up, which it looks like Capcom looked at that and said, "Hey, that's some of these ideas we should incorporate in later versions," which is kind of neat.
About the versions, right? So you
Hmm.
mentioned Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. That was released on March 1992. It rebalanced characters, power levels, and allowed both players to match the select same character, or both players to select the same character with different colors. I did not know in Road Warrior you couldn't do that. Did you know that?
Rogue Warrior, what are you talking about?
Or World Warrior, the Street Fighter 2 World Warrior.
Oh, the first one? Yeah, they
Yeah.
didn't have alternate colors.
See, I never noticed that before because I never seen anybody try and pick on that version try and pick the same character as I'm playing. But I thought that was a really neat addition to Championship Edition. That really allows you to pick the characters you want.
The way these revisions came out, they came out fast too. So like even though Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior was the first one that came out, like once like a new version like Champion Edition came out, like everybody up like, that became the new norm, and then the next version came out and that became like the new norm. And it wasn't until like we're like several versions in that you'd actually start seeing older versions of the arcade, but like people upgraded their arcades, just upgraded right away. They must have seen like the big how popular these were and how well they were selling, that it was worth the upgrade to keep the interest, and they did. But like there was just so many revisions.
Yeah, there was a lot of revisions, and I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna be kind of shocking. going back and playing all the different versions, and maybe this is just the gamer in me nowadays. I really like used to be. I love the turbo
Hmm.
mode, right? But going back, I really like the original Street Fighter 2 and the Championship Edition because I really like the speed because it seems like it's slowed down, or I guess you would say it's normal speed, but you can really react really well to what the person's doing, instead of just kind of like, it just gives you a chance to react, and it gives you a chance to really pull off nice combos and things like that. I really like the speed. I didn't think I would say that, but going back, I really enjoyed the speed of those. It seemed like the animation was a lot smoother to me, and not in those high speeds. So I don't know. I just like that. How did you feel about the normal speed? I guess you would say.
Felt it was like slow as molasses. Like I just didn't. I didn't. I once Turbo came out, I'm all for Turbo. And even when like the Super Street Fighter 2 came out and it wasn't Turbo, I wasn't into it until it became Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and then the later versions. So I did go through and play through all the different versions and stuff. I even played through like the console versions just to check them out again. And that's one thing I can't get these days. When someone wants to go back and play Street Fighter 2, and I see them like going to like the Super Nintendo to play the Street Fighter 2, when like there's so many different ways of playing like an arcade perfect translation, and that's these are the days when home ports weren't like a 1-to-1. They were close. They were really close. This is the generation where they were extremely passable and close, but it wasn't until like the next generation with like the Saturn that we got like perfect arcade ports. So yeah, for me the speed, I can, it's just like this. I found this out. If I'm playing the original Street Fighter 2, I am destroying the AI, the computer. I'm just beating the hell out of it. And I play the latest version, the last versions of Super Street Fighter 2. That AI, that computer is taking me to task, and or at least putting up quite a challenge. And I know there's a ways to adjust the difficulty, but it's like in that slower speed in that original earlier set, like I am just wiping the floor with these guys, which is that itself is fun. But like I really like the turbo because I played so much of the turbo. One thing that changes for me when playing with the turbo is I'll play with characters that I don't normally play with. That if I'm playing like the turbo version, so like the characters that require you to like hold back for 2 seconds and then forward, or hold down for 2 seconds and then up, like I'm not into that. But on turbo, that action is instant. It sped up that clock, so I'm just back forward, back forward. So like I can be as cheap as I want and play like M Bison and just like fly across the screen left and right and back and forth, and just completely cheap and own the guy, which I did, and it's fun for a little while. But especially when you're playing with friends, that kind of gameplay doesn't. People might allow you to do it one match, but if you keep doing it, then they're not going to want to. Then that you're done playing. Anyway, I like the turbo.
Yeah, before we move on to Turbo, one thing I wanted to say about Championship Edition for people that don't know was that's the version that allowed you to play the bosses that were previously only computer
Hmm.
bosses. I think it's Bison, Vega, Sagat, and M Bison
Balrog.
or Balrog. Yeah,
Yeah, Balrog, M Bison, Sagat, and Vega. And not only that is like you said, each character had like an alternate color outfit, which was really cool. And the levels were also alternate colors. They were still the same level, like they didn't change the sprites like they do in later versions, but they did like instead of like the sunset being red, it's the sky's blue, or instead of this one color, it's another color. It's a slight change, and some of the levels I like the new coloring, but it was enough. It basically they kind of did just enough to where if you were in the arcade and you saw that at a glance and you're a Street Fighter fan, you're already familiar, you instantly recognize the difference by just the stage being a different palette of colors. So having that different color was a big deal, and it just a slight upgrade, and it only came a year later. But being able, like you said, to be able to play the bosses as playable characters was a big deal.
yeah. I mean, it's a fighting game that had like six. I think it was six characters or eight
It had eight
characters you could
characters.
select. And then they added four more. That's huge. That's a big percentage of the roster update. And then on top of that, I really enjoyed the recoloring too of the levels. I thought it looked really good. I thought it was like more perfected version of the levels, and they're really noticeable color updates. Like when you go from one to the other, they're really noticeable. But that came so Championship Edition came out March 19th, 1992. And then Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting was released in December 1992, so not even a year later. It increased the playing speed and gave some characters new special moves. It was created as Capcom's official response to a wave of unauthorized modifications for the arcade cabinet of Championship Edition that appeared throughout 1992, such as the so-called Rainbow Edition. That's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so this is a direct result of those hacks that we saw that were out. Like they sped it up was one of the things in like the hacks, like the Rainbow Edition, plus a few other things. And this was their chance to like kind of nip that in the bud, where they, at the same time adopt some of these cool features that and like Turbo, and that was a big deal. And again, with that as well, it came like the first like Championship came with like an alternate color. Turbo came with like several alternate colors.
I think there's 4 per character
to choose from. So if you hit like jab is one, it was a lot more than just 2, and then later on even more. But like this is where that Ryu has that nice cool blue white like outfit. It's really neat.
Mm-hmm. I like Turbo Hyper Fighting version. Oh, yeah. I enjoy that too, but I just going back this time, I noticed that I like the slower version better. I do like the Turbo version. I played that for a while. And you are right about the charge characters, Brian. You can actually play those pretty decently. I mean, like
they're no charge anymore. This if you speed it up enough, like there is no charge time. It's just back, forward, down, up, and it's just like you can just wreck with them with those charge characters. But also,
yeah, I was destroying people with Guile.
And this one, like so, Street Fighter 2, like the first one, did come out like on the Super Nintendo. And like you mentioned, it I think it said sold 6.3 million copies on the Super Nintendo, just that version alone. It was like their best-selling single game for the next 2 decades. It's a best-selling single platform and it's highest-selling third-party game for the Super Nintendo. I had this game, and it wasn't cheap. Like cartridges back then, they weren't cheap. I had this game, and I loved it so much. I even bought like the Capcom fighting stick for the Super Nintendo. Like, and that was about as much as the game itself. And then then they, Super Nintendo got a Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting. I bought that as well. But after that, like I didn't go on to the later versions on the home console with the Super Nintendo. I already kind of invested like an arcade stick and I bought this game twice. Now, I loved all the additions, but buying it a third time was a pill I wasn't ready to swallow. But it's so much fun going back and playing these versions. So, like, want to talk about what came after Turbo?
Yeah, we were talking about the NES. The Genesis had Street Fighter on it as well, but it just didn't do very good.
Mm-hmm. They got the Champion Edition, so they got the one in the middle. And then they also, because it came out so close, it was a unique version. They had a Champion Edition that also had a Turbo setting. So it didn't have all the colors and some of the extra features that were in Turbo, but it was like a Champion Edition with a Turbo setting. So it was closer to like the bootlegs, sort of, in that way. And then they both later came out with Genesis and the Super Nintendo. Both later got Super Street Fighter 2 games. Again, I didn't go buy it the third time that generation, but I did play them in the arcades and at friends' houses.
Yeah. Oh my God, the original Championship Edition of Street Fighter 2 that was released for the Super Nintendo, it was like everybody had that game. And people talk about the prices of game now, but I saw that thing for $90 at Servers merchandise on sale. So, we used to pay some bread for some games, It was because of the cartridge mostly.
All that mega power. Yeah, the cartridges were expensive, especially with all the memory. We did, and man, we played the hell out of those games. Another thing that was really cool, just on the home version, and we're talking about the bootlegs, is like the Game Genie out back in the day was a big deal. I had a Game Genie. It was a lot of fun. One of the things that was really useful is if you rented a game and it was a little hard on you, or rented a game that didn't have necessarily a game save, you could like use the Game Genie to kind of go back to that level and continue the game. But on Street Fighter, it allowed us to do things like throw a fireball in the air or get all these crazy colors, or earlier versions where they were put in a code to where you could play like the bosses sort of in like the version, the original version before they added the bosses. It was broken, but it was fun. But like the throwing fireballs in the air and speeding things up on earlier versions was a lot of fun doing that with the Game Genie.
Yeah, I never had a Game Genie. I did. My next door neighbor had one, so I got to see it in action. We never played it with Street Fighter though. I thought they were really cool. If I could go back in the day, I would have had a Game Genie just to mess around with games, but that's just something that was never in the cards for me. I definitely think it's cool that it allowed you to shoot like fireballs in the air and stuff like that. That's pretty neat. It's pretty powerful for the Game Genie back in the day, you know?
Yeah, the Game Genie was really fun.
Yeah, it was great. I think, I wouldn't mind something like that coming out nowadays, something that would just help you out with games. I mean, even if disabled trophies, it would be cool to get like, I don't know, like, really wonky stuff out of a game or really overpowered stuff out of a game,
Yeah, or max level your character, or start on level 4 or whatever,
Yeah. Elder Ring started at level 600.
Yeah.
So, Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers, released in September 1993, and used more advanced CP system which allowed for updated graphics and audio. It introduced 4 new characters, but the speed was pretty much the same for it as it was before Turbo. So that was an interesting move that they went to Turbo and then they went back from Turbo. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, they had like a turbo hyper fighting, and like we mentioned, it was kind of a response quickly of all the bootlegs. And then when they made Super Street Fighter 2, and like you said, they added the 4 characters, but they took the turbo out, or they took the turbo out, and they also redid like, this is the one where they actually redid like all the backgrounds entirely, not just a different color palette. They like changed same theme, same thing, but they like gave it another revisit. And as you pointed out, this is on their new CPS 2 arcade hardware, and the previous one was on CPS 1. So this is their new beefier round of hardware and just showing off more this version.
One of the things I like about the new Street Fighter 2, the new challengers, is the new characters, right? Because it came out with Cammy, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
T-Hawk, I barely ever used T-Hawk. Was it Fei Long?
Fei Long and DJ.
And DJ. DJ I used a lot. I really liked DJ back in the day.
Yeah, I always liked Cammy. I liked her spinning kick. It was close. There was parts of her that felt like M. Bison, and other parts that felt just different. But Cammy was a character that I was really happy with. I didn't play much DJ, and I definitely didn't play any T-Hawk. Fei Long, as cool as he was, and I wanted him to be cool, like I never really got into him as much, even though he, is like Bruce Lee.
And another thing about Cammy is that Cammy's like my arch rival in Street Fighter. Like I don't ever really play her. I mean, I dabble every now and then, but whenever I'm playing like if I'm playing the computer or I'm playing somebody that knows Cammy really well, they're always tough matches for me. Because she seems to have a counter for everything that like a Ryu type character does. So I think that's why she was made, is to counter the Ryu type characters, which is like fireballs, spinning kicks, spinning air kicks, and uppercuts.
Yep.
Shin Ryuken. So any other thoughts on Super Street Fighter 2 new challengers?
No, I think we can move on to Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think the reason why they took the speed change is because they knew they could release it again. I think Capcom had caught on to the fact that people will keep buying new editions of Street Fighter.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I also think that like Turbo was really just a quick response to the bootleg world, and they were probably already deep in development of Street Fighter 2, and they're like, well, we're not changing this game. We're in the middle, like we're developing it on the new hardware, and this is it. Like, this is the game. And then they realize, no, people really like that Turbo. And like, okay, well, as you mentioned, here's another swing at it. And here's Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, just released in 94 in February.
Yeah, it was released in February 94, which is, considering how fast the other renditions came from, that actually took like a good year between the new challengers and...
Not really. September 1993 to February 94. That's only like that's like less than 6 months.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't notice that. Yeah, it's just a faster edition.
No, this is quick. this was basically it seems like we were saying, like, they worked on this game for a while and then quickly realized that they need to put turbo in this thing because that was a huge, huge positive. And I remember even seeing the arcades, like you would see, this is where you'd start to see like other versions like stick out. That this was like you would still see like you'd still see Street Fighter 2 Turbo in arcades actively next to like Super Street Fighter 2 arcade cabinets. Like they didn't go
were playing
away.
both of them.
People liked playing the old versions. Mm-hmm.
Graphically, the thing that blew me away from the Super Street Fighters was that Ryu scene at the beginning where he's just kind of bouncing, and then all of a sudden he shoots up.
Oh yeah, that was a real tour de force on the graphics there, showing here's the new hardware. It was badass.
Yeah, I was like, wow, dude, this is almost real looking. It's funny how you feel that way with games when they were like totally not real looking.
Yeah, I remember playing like Punch Out on the NES, going, look, it's just like a living cartoon. Can't get, but now that intro is just, it's really cool. What they were trying to do with that system, you could see that it was, they kind of changed the hardware, and I guess they reached a limit. And even when I was playing all these different versions this week, I even saw that they went back and made a CPS2 version of Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Like I said, that version was really popular. I guess I could see that they were like, well, we need to figure out a way to sell that version on our new hardware. So they did.
Yeah, that's cool. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. And it plays just like the same, but it just runs on CPS2 hardware.
Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Who's your favorite character? Is it Cammy?
I like Cammy, but Super Street Fighter 2, the whole series, my favorite character is Ryu.
Ryu? Mine was Ken. At this time, I had learned to use Guile and Blanca. The charged characters really intimidated me when I was first a new Street Fighter player. But once I figured it out, they're actually really powerful because you're always blocking.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because in Turbo, though, I did play a ton of M. Bison because of the Turbo feature and the fact that his charge character was now just, like, the charge time was pretty much zeroed out. And as you pointed out, when you're pulling back, you're guarding. And if you're guarding, that's probably a good thing, because I can tell you what, I'm bad at blocking in fighting games, and you know it, and you take advantage of that every time we play. And I have to get good at it. It's like, okay, I really have to, because like I can see this is not working out. And it also, when you mentioned that Cammy, it's like, well, maybe that's why I like Cammy so much, because when I'm playing with you, I have a shot at winning.
She's a real good counter for Ryu type characters. We were talking about the computer being harder as the releases came out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, if I was on the arcade, if I got to like the fourth person, it was like almost impossible to beat. They would just counter everything that you did.
Hey, also another thing I think we should probably bring up too, as we mentioned that even though this series, and it was all Street Fighter 2, was rapidly kind of getting iterated, there was some fatigue, but also, as we mentioned, like the community bore out new features with like the bootlegs. And then, like, similar with this character that was later, at last introduced in, like, the Street Fighter 2 series, Akuma. His character was kind of built out of, like, a EGM, like, Electronic Gaming Monthly magazine that had their April Fool's joke about Shang Long being a playable character in the game. Remember that? When that happened?
I did not know that.
No, okay, so you don't... Okay, so EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly... Every April, they would put a joke in their magazine. It was a fake.
Yeah, I remember their April Fool's jokes, but I didn't know one of.
But you don't remember the Shang Long one?
No, dude.
Okay, so let me explain this. It's crazy. So basically, it's like Akuma before Akuma existed. So what they noticed is in the translation or whatever, like Ryu says, you'll never be able to beat me until you could beat my Shang Long or whatever he says, or something to that effect. What they did is they said, well, who is this Shang Long? What can we do? And like, so the magazine, they kind of concocted a few screenshots and they looked really good. And they were saying, this is an unlockable character that you can fight in Street Fighter 2. And this was an earlier version. I think back in the day, probably somewhere around the time when like Championship Edition was out or somewhere around that time frame. When this magazine was published. And even though it was on home, they were saying this was an arcade like Easter egg. And so in order to unlock them, you had to play through like as your character and beat everybody without ever taking a hit. So you had to have perfects through every single person, and then you had to get to like M. Bison, and then you had to like run out the clock without getting hit. And so once the timer ran out and you'd already beaten every character in the arcade without getting touched, then all of a sudden like Shenlong would fly into the screen, like jump into the screen and like toss this, basically the same animation that you see like Ryu toss people.
Mm-hmm.
Toss M. Bison off the screen, and now you have to fight Shenlong, and he's like this ultra dude. Basically, he's Akuma before Akuma, and so that had tons of people going to the arcade, spending God knows amount of quarters to try to do this because, like I said, you had to play every character, or you had to play against every character up to like M. Bison without getting touched. You had to be perfect. Like if they hit you once, they were saying, it's not going to happen. So it was a huge like Easter egg or April Fool's joke. And later on, like Capcom said, that does sound like a cool idea, at least as far as another like Ryu character that's even like an older, grislier, bigger badass in a way. And so yeah, when we came to like the last versions of Street Fighter 2 and like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo X or whatever, like Grandmaster Challenge, they added Akuma. At first, you could fight him as like a boss, and then like there was a hidden character, and so like, yeah, Akuma was born out of April Fool's joke.
I did not know that. That's really cool to know.
Mm-hmm.
I always like Akuma. Like I don't know how much you've ever done like the animes that go along with Street Fighter and stuff like that, but they always make Akuma like a really cool character, story wise. He's just always thirsty for more power, though.
And I know in the later versions, you're really good at playing as him and stuff and pulling off some of his moves.
Yeah, he's the only thing. So Akuma has great power, but if you play Akuma, you notice that he doesn't have the HP that Ken and Ryu have. Like he has like 70% or maybe 60% of their HP because you can die really quick as Akuma if you don't block or you just let a big combo hit you.
Wait, so even though everyone has the same size health bar, you're saying he has less that, like, if someone hits him, it hurts for more than it would someone else?
Yeah, that's how they balanced him.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then there was Super Street Fighter 2 X Grandmaster Challenge. That came out in 1994, and that was on the 3DO, correct?
It got a release on the 3DO, yeah. And it, as cool as a port as that is, it's still on the 3DO, and like there's not a lot of 6-button 3DO controllers out there, and now you're gonna have to hunt down 2 of them. So even though it came out, on the 3DO, and it was the final version, it really, not a lot of people played it.
Yeah, I think Street Fighter 2 fatigue was setting in.
Oh yeah.
I can't stress how much people just played at home the Championship Edition like crazy before Super Street Fighter came out.
Yeah, that and like the Turbo Hyper Fighting one, but also just like that. It was interesting. While there was all these different iterations of Street Fighter 2, Capcom was still making new Street Fighter games with like Street Fighter Alpha series. They'd already started releasing like the first like Street Fighter Alpha was still on the CPS-1 hardware, and then the later ones were on CPS-2. So while they were running and releasing new iterations of Street Fighter 2, they were still going at it with new versions of Street Fighter with Alpha and the Zero series kind of getting released alongside new iterations of Street Fighter 2.
Yeah.
Had a long tail, and they were still trying to like find that more lightning in that bottle with the different versions. As much as I love Alpha and Zero, people were really at one point just like, where's 3?
Right. I love the Alpha series myself. I played Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold a ton, and I played Street Fighter Alpha 3 a lot. I didn't have a console that could play Alpha 1 whenever that came out.
Well, the console, it did come out. It's not necessarily a great port on the Super Nintendo. It's there, but you wouldn't want to play it until like later on when it got released on like the Saturn.
Yeah, true. Well, speaking about lightning in a bottle, basically Street Fighter 2's been released on everything since,
Mm-hmm.
It was like almost, it's hard. There's less console systems that don't have Street Fighter 2 than there are that do, So I can't think of one that it wasn't released on, but I know like on on the PlayStation and the Saturn, it was released after the Super Nintendo. There was a Dreamcast version. I think that was a Street Fighter 2X Grandmaster Challenge that was released on that.
Yeah, that's the one we were talking about. That also, got on the Dreamcast. But
And then the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, I'm not sure if they ever saw a Street Fighter 2 version, but it might have been a pack-in with like another Street Fighter.
they did. They got like a collection.
Oh, collection? Yeah. All right.
Mm-hmm. I remember because there was this really cool like looking like anniversary Street Fighter arcade stick for like the PlayStation 2 and I think the Xbox, and that I think it played off either one. Just like it had a little adapter dongle. Anyway, I remember I was looking to get it, and my friend who was really good at arcades and especially Street Fighter, like he paid for his college school books by going and playing money matches and stuff. Anyway, he was telling me that arcade stick was garbage, and so I was like, okay, I won't get it. And then like a year later, I saw he has that stick. He goes, "Oh, it is garbage, but you can upgrade the buttons and make it a lot better." I was like, "What?" Like, I could have gone out and buy arcade buttons for it to make it better. I was looking for an arcade stick for that generation, for sure. If we're talking about all the releases of Street Fighter 2, way later in like the Street Fighter and like the PS3, we got the Street Fighter 2
HD.
like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, which was kind of a mixed bag. At first, it was going to be like they were showing off the graphics of like how they were going to HD graphics the Street Fighter 2 and how careful like they were going to upscale them to be high definition, and it looked incredible, and it just looked more like the original artwork and stuff. But anyway, at some point Capcom realized that that's going to cost way too much money to do all that, and so they just hired another company to make it, and a lot cheaper, and that's kind of what we got. And that the last release was like on the Switch, and that version had an evil Ryu character, so you could play as like an evil Ryu, which was interesting.
Yeah, that's actually a good addition. It looks pretty good. The Evil Ray is really fun too. My only problem with that edition is like, dude, I'm not gonna sit there and spend like $50 on Street Fighter 2 again, you know?
Yeah, and I hear you. And I'm not a huge fan of that art style. So but going back as we're talking about which Street Fighters 2 do I gravitate to? I usually gravitate to like one of the last releases of like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, or I'll go back to Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting, the CPS 1 version, the last CPS 1 version of it, because I had so much fun memories on the Super Nintendo. But I don't like to go back to play the Super Nintendo version. I like to play the arcade version, because even though it was a solid port, it's these days I didn't have a choice of having an arcade machine in my house or playing that exact version. But here we are, so many years later, where that is a choice.
My one problem with Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Super Street Fighter 2 The New Challengers, for the first two fights you seem to always play the new characters, And
Yeah.
I understand that, because they're like, we made new characters, we want to show them off to you. But it gets really boring always fighting one of those, like the first two matches. I prefer when it's just like total randomness in the previous versions, but that's just a small thing that I kind of don't like.
And then, and as we've said, there's been many different Street Fighter after Street Fighter 2, and even though the first one got the whole series off the ground, the Street Fighter 2 is the reason why we're still playing Street Fighter games. This success was just so big that the franchise still exists. And now there's Street Fighter 6. Well, I haven't gotten around to playing it yet, and largely due to the fact, as we mentioned, all these different variations. And after they keep doing that on every different Street Fighter, you get fatigue, and you're like, okay, just let me know when the last version's out, and then I'll play that one.
Mm-hmm. And even the last version's not the last version,
Yeah, you think you got the last version, then you find out, oh no, you got the arcade edition, but now there's the Champion edition.
Or like, I think it was Ultra, and then the arcade edition came out. And I was like, oh my god! And even Capcom said, we're talking about Street Fighter 4, but yeah, even Capcom said after Ultra, there's not going to be another edition. And then a year later, there was arcade editions.
Yeah,
I like Street Fighter 3, just to throw that out there, because that was like the next one after the Alpha series. I played that. A lot of people didn't like Street Fighter 3. I felt like the whole roster kind of took a downturn because they tried to put so many new people in. But the people that I was familiar with and liked, I did enjoy it. And then Street Fighter 4 was by far my favorite out of the whole series. I think that was.
Yeah, that was another bright spot for sure. That was one where I had to go out and get another arcade stick. And at that time, I was thrilled that they were offering such like Mad Catz. It was interesting. Mad Catz was selling this arcade stick, and they were selling it so hard. They're like, "Look, we didn't even make it. Like those are not our buttons. That's not not our stick. We're buying these Sanwa arcade buttons and arcade sticks, and we're having Capcom overlook all the manufacturing and giving us their blessing." So that Mad Catz Street Fighter Tournament Edition stick was so good. And after that, it's like any arcade game that showed up, like even a beat 'em up or shoot 'em up or whatever, I was thrilled to play on my PlayStation with that arcade stick, and I still love that arcade stick. But
Yeah, Mad Catz used to make third-party hardware for systems,
generally known for bad.
and they went out of business because, yeah, generally known for bad product. But I have a Mad Catz Street Fighter 5 controller for the PS4 and 5, and I actually really like it.
Oh yeah, at that point they were turning the corner on actually making controllers that people liked, because generally growing up, like third-party controllers for consoles were often less than like just less comfortable, less enjoyable, less reactive. They're just less than like the standard one. But after a while, they definitely, especially like I said, once they kind of worked with Capcom, they really upped their game on their controls, and like that 6-button fighting pad that you have is really nice.
I like it. I can't live without it. So, what are your final thoughts on Street Fighter 2? Overall, all editions.
Well, it's the one game that got us used to idea of iterations and versions and so many, and like there was a fatigue, and but it was so much like this was the game, and it was the fighting game that it's the fighting game. Even as much as I love other fighting games, it's the one I compare it to. Like some people might be Smash Brothers. I'm more Street Fighter. Like I love this type of fighting game, and this is one I can wrap my head around. These days, going and playing some of these games and really learning the characters, that's not something I'm gonna do. But I definitely like going and smashing buttons. And if any character throws any attacks that are similar to Ryu or Sakura, I'm looking really good in that game. But yeah, I fighting games the way they are, for me, I owe it all to like Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, Street Fighter 2, my final thoughts is kind of like it just was a place. It was a place in time. We talk about how overall it sold $10 billion. That's huge for a fighting game that came out in the 90s. On the CPS2 and the Super Nintendo. But this was the game that everybody was expected to play. Like whenever you went over to someone's house and there was like everybody's passing the controller, you were expected to know how to play Street Fighter. It was like, if it was someone's first time, people were like, wow, dude, where have you been? It's a great game. It really holds up. I like the combo system. I love the 6-button layout. I think the 6-button layout is great. And I'm really glad that Capcom stuck with it for a very long time. I love the simplicity of the top being punches and the bottom being kicks. I think that the character rosters are just great. I think it's hard pressed to find somebody that's not good. Even Zangief, that I don't play with that much, when I really do learn him and try him out, he's amazing. I have to give this game just like really high praise. It really holds up to the test of time going back and playing it, which is something that I wasn't sure it was going to do because it's just so long ago, and we're talking like 30 years now, since the original. It brings back that nostalgic magic, but it's also a great game today. Like I feel like I could, if someone liked fighting games, I could introduce them to Street Fighter 2 and they would still have fun.
Oh yeah, this is if someone even not familiar with fighting games, you could get them into this one, and this would be, the Rosetta Stone. You learn how to play this, and that it kind of helps them with a ton of other games in fighting.
Yeah. So Brian, what are you up to this week?
Well, this week again, I'm writing some more on my website, and again, I'm going to continue playing more Alan Wake, and I'm going to continue playing more Grand Theft Auto 3 for sure. And so that's kind of what I got going on.
Yeah, I downloaded a Grand Theft Auto 3. I meant to mention that earlier, but it's only 5 gigs, so I was like, no big deal. But
Isn't that great? It's so
Yes, it
nice
is nice.
when things don't take up like 100 gigs
Right?
or 50 or whatever. And if you add it, you're like, well, that's not really going to be like, do I delete all these games or to play this one? It's like, no, I got room.
Oh, speaking of that though, that King of Fighters game is like 85 gigs on the PlayStation 5. And for some
85 gigs?
yeah, and for some reason it's like almost like half that for the PlayStation 4, but I wanted the best graphics, so and I have the M2 storage, so I was like, okay, screw it, we'll download it. 85 gigs, that's just crazy compared to like 5 gigs for Grand Theft Auto. But we are talking about a big gap graphically. Unreal Engine versus an older game.
And I have seen the numbers go the other way sometimes, where for some reason, like the PS5 version will be smaller just because it's using like better encryption or better file, whatever, or compression.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I still plan on playing Clair Obscure, Expedition 33. I'm getting a lot better at it, man. And my characters are starting to level up, which is good. I'm enjoying that a lot. And as far as that, I just got work and a couple of appointments I got to go to, and that's it. Where can people find you online, Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, you can find me online at Nostalgic Pixel on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, nostalgicpixel.com, and on my Twitch channel, Nostalgic Pixel TV, where some of the games we've been mentioning, you might catch me streaming.
Yeah, that's excellent. You can find me at Trywin Brian on X. We want to thank you for listening to the show, and you liked it. Please give us a 5-star review on your podcast app of choice. And you can follow us on Patreon at The Legendary Backlog. It's free. It'll give you access to all our sites. We're trying to build a community of people who love games. See you next time.
Thanks for listening.